I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the one.
Fuck you!
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Flicks Files. My name's Roger and this is my alternative Christmas video. And it will be alternative because I have absolutely nothing to do with Christmas. And I thought before I start to give a little disclaimer again and just say that I make videos in one take. I just set up my phone, start recording and start talking, and then edit in clips according to what I'm talking about. Now, the reason I do it that way is because I feel it's a more genuine one-to-one approach. I don't script and I don't really like watching YouTube videos where they're really heavily edited. It just puts me off. I'd rather watch somebody talking naturally as if I was sat next to them in a pub. So inevitably, when I'm talking about a movie, I'm just relying on my recollections of having watched it many, many times over the years. So I don't watch it before I record this video to refresh my memory. I just go with the feelings and the memories that I have from all the years of watching that particular movie. And that's just the way I like to do videos. So hopefully it's different enough to make my channel stand out a little bit on YouTube. And I just find it more enjoyable to just talk in front of a camera and not have to script it and read it out as if I worked for the BBC. So I hope you will enjoy this video and that you'll stick with me. So let's get started.
A few of us are endeavouring to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth.
How much may we put you down for, Mr. Scrooge? Nothing.
A little bit of background as to what made me choose the film I'm going to talk about for my Christmas video. I was on holiday a few weeks ago in Sri Lanka, and what a beautiful country it is. And we had a tour guide that took us around the country and drove us to various places. And one of the places we went to was a town called Kandy, which is spelled with a K. And we were there for 2 days. And throughout the first day, I had this niggling thing in my mind of, Kandy, I know that name from something, and I attributed it to a movie, because why else would I remember it? That's just how I am. I just love movies. And I Googled it and it suddenly came back to me and I thought, oh yeah, brilliant. And it turned out that Kandy was a location that was used for the filming of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom in 1983. So Steven Spielberg, Harrison Ford, and all the cast and production crew descended on Sri Lanka in 1983, and they took over part of a tea plantation and removed a lot of the vegetation and turned it into the impoverished village that they encounter near the beginning of the movie, where they are set upon their mission of getting the Shankara stones from Pankot Palace. And there was a few other scenes that they filmed in Sri Lanka, namely when they're on the elephants and they're riding the elephants through the jungle. And also the end sequence where Indy returns back to the village with the stones and all the children run up behind it. So it was lovely to think that I was in that area where they filmed this movie, or filmed a small part of this movie. And I thought, I've got to try and find these locations. And I asked the local guide, and he kind of knew a little bit about the movie, but he was too young to remember it being filmed there. So he asked a few other people in the area, and sure enough, there were a few older guys there that do remember the filming. And they gave us kind of the location of where they were. And we started to head up there, but it became quickly apparent that it was up on like a mountainside, and it had all been overgrown with jungle and just lots of vegetation, and it was almost impossible to get to. And my partner wasn't keen on the idea of hacking our way through all of this undergrowth to get to God knows what. So I got a few photographs of kind of nearby that I'll just quickly show you while I'm talking. But suffice to say, we never really saw any real remnants of where they filmed. It's all too much overgrown for that. I've had a look since I came back home, and there are a few YouTube videos of people that have found the exact location. And suffice to say that there's very little, if anything, left. The only thing of note is a large rock that still has the little alcove carved into it where the Shankara stone was sat in the village at the beginning of the movie. So that would have been nice to see, but unfortunately, in this instance, I just couldn't get to it. We weren't prepared to do that. But it gave me the idea of talking about Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, because I just love that movie. So that was the little flame of inspiration that made me want to do this video. So let's crack on.
We are going to die!
Now, as my channel is all about movies, I think it's only fair that I talk a little bit about Indiana Jones before I get into Temple of Doom. Namely, when I first saw Indiana Jones, when I got into those movies. Well, I'm old enough to remember seeing Raiders of the Lost Ark in the cinema back in 1981. And I've said before on my channel that when I was a teenager, when I was very little, up to my late teenage years, I had an aunt that was the manageress of the local cinema in our town. So I could get in for free. It was brilliant. And I would go with my dad, and we would watch many movies at the cinema, and we could jump the queue. We could just go straight in, and we didn't have to pay, and it was brilliant. And I've often said that that's why I'm such a movie lover now, and what shaped me as a film lover was just having free access to all of these films when I was growing up. Because you've got to remember, this was in the very early stages of video recorders in the home. So the main source of watching movies when I was little in the 70s was just going to the cinema. So I saw a lot of films at the cinema. And I've often said that when I see films at the cinema back in the day, I'd estimate, I've probably seen this 3 times. And it sounds flippant of me to keep saying that, but I probably did see it 3 times if I really enjoyed it, because I could get in for free. And I remember not wanting to take advantage of my aunt letting me get in the cinema for free. So I said to her, I'd only see a movie 3 times if I really, really loved it, and I wouldn't go any more than that. Otherwise, I'd probably be there every day. So my memory of seeing Raiders of the Lost Ark is very clear. And the reason for that was, while we were in the foyer waiting for the showing that was currently playing to finish, so everyone else would be queuing outside, but we were allowed in to chat to my aunt in the quietness of the foyer while the current showing was coming to an end. And I have a very vivid memory of suddenly the theme tune of the movie playing as the credits started to roll with, the dun da 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 da. And suddenly there was this clapping and cheering coming from the theatre, and we could hear it through the wall. And I'd never experienced that before. And I don't think I've ever experienced it since. The British are very restrained when it comes to cinema going. The Americans are a lot more animated and make their feelings known. But yeah, 1981 in the UK, people were clapping and cheering at the end of this movie. And I vividly remember thinking, holy crap, this must be a really good film to get that kind of response. And sure enough, when I went to see it, it completely blew me away. Because even as an 11-year-old, I had Steven Spielberg on my radar. Because I know he did Duel, which I would have seen many times at that point. I know he did Jaws, which at that time was possibly my favourite movie after the first Star Wars. And I know he did Close Encounters, which was another movie I saw a number of times at the cinema and just fell in love with. So I was very excited to see Raiders of the Lost Ark. And sure enough, when I came out of that showing, it was clear that Steven Spielberg was my favourite filmmaker and he could do no wrong. But I hadn't seen 1941 at that point. But yeah, it was just fantastic. So fast forward a few years later to about 1983, and we had a Betamax video recorder, which I've talked about in an earlier video. And I remember that my dad managed to purchase an ex-rental copy of Raiders of the Lost Ark from our local video shop. And you've got to remember, this is way back before movies became available to buy. There were very few videotapes that you could actually buy and watch over and over and over. So we managed to get an ex-rental copy. And I remember us having it on Betamax. And the other cool thing is we also had one of the very early black and white portable televisions, which had a very tiny screen. It was probably only about 4 or 5 inches in size, in black and white. And I've tried looking up the exact model that we had, but I can't remember the name of it. But it was like an army television. It was like in a green plastic case with a carry handle. It was about the size of a small suitcase. And I can remember my dad wiring the video recorder that we had into this little portable TV. And he got me some very large over-the-ear cup headphones. And that way I could sit in the corner of the living room in my own little world and watch Raiders of the Lost Ark on this very small black and white television while my parents were watching something else on the normal TV. And this I did. And I must have watched that film easily 50 times, 50, 60 times on this little small black and white television. And even watching it on that just enthralled me. And I just fell in love with this movie. And so when it became clear that the next Indiana Jones movie was on the horizon and it was called Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, I was just so excited and couldn't wait to see it. And I bought the novelization of it, which I featured in an earlier video, and read that. And yeah, I was just so desperate to see it. And sure enough, when I did see it at the cinema, it just, again, completely blew me away. And I loved it even more than I love Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I thought would be impossible. But sure enough, I came out of that cinema going, oh my God, that was fantastic. And I've owned it on just about every format available over the years. And as of today, I've got the 4K Indiana Jones box set, which is glorious because it's probably the best quality we've ever seen these movies. So it's fantastic to see it in that way. So yeah, that's my little potted history of Indiana Jones.
Too much to drink, Dr. Jones.
Now, I've found over the years talking to different people about this film that it's very polarizing. A lot of people are like me and say that it's their favorite Indiana Jones film. And a lot of people don't like it, or they rate it quite low. And I think the reason for that, and it's been widely publicized that Steven Spielberg is not the biggest fan of this film anymore, is that they feel in retrospect that they went too dark with the theme of this film. And I think in many interviews, George Lucas has said that he attributed the darkness of this movie to the fact that he was going through a divorce at the time that they were setting up the story. So he just wanted to make a darker picture. And there are elements in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom that are dark. We can't ignore the fact, but I just think it makes it a much better movie, and it makes it more thrilling. I mean, the beginning of it, the opening of the movie is set at 2 years previous to the Raiders of the Lost Ark. So Harrison Ford, I've seen footage of him being interviewed on set, and he was saying, you know, I'm a good actor, but this movie is set 2 years previous to the film that we made 3 years ago. So he's now 5 years older, but he has to act 5 years younger. And I think he did a bang-up job. He certainly got into shape for this movie. And the last half an hour when he's showing his muscles, you can tell that he really got into peak physical condition for this film. And I always thought Harrison Ford is was one of the best physical actors that I've ever seen. He does like to muck in. He likes to get involved where he can. And his physicality, the way Harrison Ford runs is so unique. It's like Tom Cruise. He's one of those actors that if you just saw him in silhouette running, you would instantly recognize him as Harrison Ford. And the clip I always think of when I think of him running is from the first movie where Marion gets stuffed into one of the rice baskets and he's chasing, trying to rescue her, and he's running down an alleyway. And his run is just so unique. But yeah, how blessed are we that we grew up watching Harrison Ford in peak physical condition, making movies of this type. Honestly, blockbuster films of this type are just a lost art. They just don't make them anymore. So rather than go through the movie beat by beat like I normally do, I think it's safe to say that 98% of people watching this video will have seen Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So they don't need me to walk them through the entire plot. So what I'm going to do, much like I did with the video of Kez that I made, is I'm just going to talk about specific parts of the movie and the bits that I just absolutely adore. And the first one of those is a sequence where they're in the tunnels underneath Pankot Palace, and they first make their way in through a secret entrance that Indy finds. And he ends up getting trapped in a room with Short Round, where Short Round accidentally steps on a triggering device on the floor, and it activates the ceiling, which begins to lower down above them. And spikes come down from the ceiling. And it's obvious that if they don't get out of there quick, they're going to get completely shish kebabbed. And it's just this great, fantastic, exciting, well-edited sequence where the two of them are trapped in this room, trying to get out. And they're relying on Willie Scott, the female protagonist of the movie, to activate the mechanism from outside because she's not trapped in the room. But the problem is she's covered in insects and she has to reach into this hole in the wall to pull a lever to deactivate the mechanism. And it's just a great sequence that has like elements of comedy in it, and it's exciting. And I think Steven Spielberg has said that this is his favorite part of this movie and that everything works so well, that the music by John Williams is perfectly cued and it speeds up at the right moment. And the scene kind of ends where she manages to release the mechanism, so it resets and the ceiling rises back up. And you see Indy is kind of kneeling on the floor looking as if to go, oh, thank God for that. And then she comes running in screaming because she's covered in insects. And she bends over and her arse accidentally presses against another button on the wall, I think it is. And she sets the whole mechanism off again. So it all starts up all over again, but this time they're all trapped in the room. And it's just this mad dash for the door. And the sequence ends where Indy dives through this closing doorway. And at the very last second, he just reaches through to grab his famous fedora hat. Before the door seals shut. And it's just absolutely brilliant, and I've always loved that sequence. And for my next sequence, I'm going to say the last 30 minutes of the movie, because it's just full-on glorious action cinema. And it kind of all kicks off where Indy has been captured by Mola Ram, who's like the main evil baddie in the movie. And he makes Indy drink this liquid that puts him in a kind of catatonic state and makes him pliable and susceptible to suggestion. So he's like a walking zombie. And he even assists Mola Ram in putting Willie Scott in a cage, and they're going to lower her down into this fire pit. And it's Short Round, bless him, the brilliant little short round who saves the day, and he grabs a kind of a flaming torch and scolds Indy with it, and the shock of that and the pain of that snaps him out of this catatonic state. And it's there that Indy goes into full-on action hero mode and manages to beat his way through the baddies, and they work their way down into the mines. And it turns out that Mola Ram is using all of the children from a local village to mine the surrounding grounds to try and find the remaining 2 Shankara stones, because he's got 3 of them and he needs all 5. And it's just a brilliant 30-minute thrill ride where so much happens. And I can remember getting this on video after I saw it at the cinema and it became available to rent. And I just loved it so much, and no matter how many times I watched it, it just never got boring. And I still love it now. And now I've been in Sri Lanka and I've visited some of the areas or got near to where they filmed some of these scenes. I just love it even more. It's just such a fantastic film. And I'm so happy that I thought of doing this for my Christmas video, because I hate Christmas, but talking about Temple of Doom is like a present to myself. It just makes me feel happy and gives me a warm glow. So the action continues with Indy fighting the brilliant Pat Roach, who is a UK wrestler turned actor. And funnily enough, Pat Roach appeared in the first 3 Indiana Jones films. He played the bald Nazi soldier that Harrison Ford has fisticuffs with in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they're fighting under that, I can't remember the name of the experimental Nazi plane, but they're fighting under that, and he ends up, Pat Roach, backing into one of the propellers and gets chopped into a fish bait. And then in Temple of Doom, Pat Roach returns dressed up in full turban and big Indian baddie guys, and he has a good scrap with Indy, and he ends up getting his headscarf caught in some rock crushing machine, and he ends up getting pulled into that and squished. And it's there that the movie, if it was possible to get any more exciting, it goes into high gear, where Indiana Jones, Willie Scott and Short Round get into a minecart. And it's just this brilliant, even now, 40 years later, it's such an exciting sequence to watch. And it just encompasses everything about brilliant filmmaking, pre-CGI special effects by Industrial Light and Magic that were done to the just highest standard. And it's just fantastic where they're on this little minecart barrel-assing down these tracks in these mines. And I can remember watching this when it first came out thinking, how the hell did they do this? How could they build such massive sets? And when you watch how they did it, it just makes me appreciate how clever it was. They built a section of track that was in a circle. So they had a big circular movie set. And what Steven Spielberg would do is film the minecart rolling around in a circle. But because you were always looking at it from the side, you would just see them in the cart with all the geography flying past them, behind them at high speed. And they would adjust the position of the lights and change the color of the lights to give the impression that they were in different parts of the mine. And it just works so well. And then, of course, at Industrial Light and Magic, they constructed whole parts of the mine track in miniature, and then used a miniature camera and filmed it at very slow speed. And of course, when they crank the speed up, it looks like you're on a roller coaster and you're going through all of these tunnels. And the way they match them, the live action and the model work together, is just absolutely sublime. Yet there are a couple of tiny little bits where you can sort of see that it's a miniature. But for God's sake, the quality of the effects for the time it was made is just absolutely brilliant. And I'm sure if they remade this movie, God forbid, and they recreated this sequence using 21st century filmmaking, it would be awful. It would just be a big CGI fest and fast cutting, fast editing, and it would probably end up giving me a headache rather than making me excited. It's just gold, the last 30 minutes of this movie. And I can't see in my mind how they could improve it. So Mola Ram, in order to still try and get the better of Indy, when he realizes he's gone down on one of these minecarts, he orders his minions to tip over a giant vessel full of water, which then goes crashing down and sends a huge torrent of water down these mine shafts. And that leads to possibly the funniest moment in the movie, where Indy realizes they're getting near the end of the track. Oh, and there's another bit that's just reminded me that I always thought was fantastic, was where they're barreling down the track, and the track, they see that it's just suddenly ends. And you can see it and you watch it and think, oh God, what's going to happen? And the cart flies off the edge of the track. And the way that all the sound stops, apart from Willie Scott's scream as his minecart flies through the air. And then, of course, suspension of disbelief. You've got to have that with a movie of this kind. But the cart just happens to land perfectly back onto the next section of track. And it just carries on rolling down at full speed. And I can remember seeing that at the cinema and just thinking, yes, that was like fantastic. And it was just so exciting. So I'm getting all worked up talking about it. It's so brilliant. So, of course, the cart gets near the end of the track and the brake handle doesn't work. So Indy has to climb out of the cart and use his boots to kind of slow down the momentum of the wheels. And in doing so, it creates a lot of heat and a lot of friction. So by the end of it, he brings the cart to a stop, but his foot's on fire. And it's this really cool, funny moment where he's trying to put his foot out by stamping it on the ground, and he's going, water, water, I need water. And of course, it's at that exact moment that this huge torrent of water appears behind them. So then he sort of goes, I need water, 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 and they all have to run away from it.
Water! 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 Come on!
And just as you're getting your breath back from that, we then get into the famous rope bridge sequence, which again is just absolutely amazing. Filmed in Sri Lanka, they really did build this rope bridge across this canyon. And this has a strong memory for me because it was the first time I heard Indy swear. And it's still, I've found that when they show this on the TV, they still edit this bit out, and it drives me crazy. And it's the scene where Indy makes his way towards the middle of the bridge. And he's holding the bag with the 3 Shankara stones in that he's managed to rescue back from the mines. And Mola Ram orders his minions to get on the bridge, and they're closing in on him from both sides, and he's sort of trapped in the middle. And it's just this lovely, lovely shot where you can see Indy with this sword, and he's looking behind him, looking both ways, and he's thinking, and you as an audience are thinking, well, what's he going to do? How's he going to get out of this? And it's there that he just happens to say,
Oh, shit.
and of course, he then makes the decision to cut the bridge and cut the ropes on the bridge. And again, when you watch this for the first time, you think, surely he's not going to do that. That's crazy. What's going to happen? And he, of course, cuts the rope and the bridge collapses and they all end up falling against the side of the cliff. And he has a big fight with Mola Ram, and Mola Ram ends up burning his hand on one of the Shankara stones that's sort of been brought to life by Indy. He ends up reciting some ancient scripture that kind of ignites the power inside the stone. So when Mola Ram holds it in his hand, it's like burning him. And as a result, he loses his grip and falls down into the river and ends up being lunch for the crocodiles.
Run, Captain!
And then the movie finally just slows down where Indy walks back into the village with all the children that he's rescued, and he returns the stones to this village. And again, that was the area that was shot in Candy. And that was the film set that I would have loved to have seen, but it's been 40 years and nature has just taken over and it's all disappeared. But my God, what a movie Indiana Jones Temple of Doom is.
That wasn't so bad, was it?
And I guess while I'm talking about Indiana Jones, I may as well just quickly cover the other movies. I have them all. I love Last Crusade. As I say, the first three are all fantastic. But if somebody held a gun to my head and said you can only ever watch one of them from now on, it would be Temple of Doom. I have Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I wasn't totally thrilled with it when I first saw it back in 2008, but it has grown on me. The more I watch it, the more I kind of like it. And I can see what they were trying to do. I know George Lucas has said in interviews that Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was meant to capture the 1950s science fiction kind of feel. And I love science fiction. So when I heard that they were bringing aliens into Indiana Jones, I didn't think, oh God, that's not a good idea. It actually got me very excited and I really wanted to see what they were going to do with it. So the more I watch that, the more it grows on me. Yeah, there are scenes that are awful. The famous scene with Shia LaBeouf and he's swinging in the trees with the monkeys is just cringeworthy. But there are bits in it that are decent. The whole beginning with the Area 51 sequence is very good. I like that a lot. And I like the sequence with the killer ant. That's quite fun. Dial of Destiny, the very latest one. I think that is an example of Disney trying to cash in on what licenses they've got left that they haven't ruined, much like with the recent Star Wars movies. Harrison Ford, bless him, is too old now, let's be honest, to be playing a role like that. And they clearly thought, well, we can't get him doing the kinds of things that he did in previous movies, so let's introduce another character. But because it's Disney, they said, let's make it a female and we'll have a strong female character. And all the action that Indiana Jones would have been doing, we can get her to do it instead. And, you know, it didn't really gel for me. The whole beginning 20 minutes with the very young CGI'd Harrison Ford was kind of quaint, but the problem with that was that he still has the old Harrison Ford voice. So you're listening to an old Harrison Ford voice coming out of a 40-year-old Harrison Ford face. And yeah, it didn't really connect with me in that way. I do have it, I'll admit, I did buy the 4K of it. So I am a bit of a hypocrite. But I just wanted to own all of them. And, you know, I watched it again when I bought it and thought, yeah, it's okay. So maybe it will be one of those movies that as the years go by, the more I watch it, the more I'll get to like it. Who knows? But yeah, so that is my indie Christmas video. And I have just loved rattling on about Temple of Doom. And feel free to correct me in the comments if I've made any mistakes, or if you really hate Temple of Doom, then please tell me why and what your favorite indie movie is. And I'd love to know. And I just want to end this alternative Christmas video by just talking very quickly about what I have planned for 2025. For the last few weeks now, I've been doing one video a week on a Friday. And I thought it might be interesting if I did, and please tell me if you think this is something you want to see, that for the Tuesday video, because I used to do a video on a Tuesday and a video on a Friday, I thought maybe what I could do is on a Tuesday is do a kind of a recap of movie news of the week, if you think that would be interesting. So because I'm a movie lover, I keep a close eye on all of the upcoming films and things that are happening and films that are about to be made. And there's always something I find every week which will interest me. So I thought maybe it would be quite fun to just do a short 15-minute, 20-minute video every Tuesday that just recaps the movie news of that particular week and just make that a regular thing for the Tuesday. And, you know, is that something as a subscriber you'd like to see? Would that be useful for you if I did a recap of the interesting news that's happening in the movie world? And then on Friday, I will continue to do my deep dives and do a movie a week, which I'll talk about in more detail. And who knows, maybe as we get into 2025, I'll start doing 3 videos a week if I can really manage it, depending on what ideas I get. I had a comment from someone asking about Doctor Who. And they said if I was a fan of Doctor Who, would I consider talking about some of my favourite Doctor Who episodes? Actually, that comment was from a chap called Sammy G, who I subscribe to his channel, which I'll link below. And I thought, yeah, I can do that. I don't have a massive amount of Doctor Who DVDs, but I have about, I'd say about 20, 25. I tend to have just bought my favourite episodes throughout the Doctors. The ones I remembered watching when I grew up. So I could also do videos of those. I have some videos about the X-Files that I plan to do. So yeah, a lot of interesting things going forward, which I hope will help grow the channel and get more viewers, because it's all about the interaction. And I just love making videos for people to watch. So there we go. I'm going to say this very quickly, but I'm not that much of an old miser that I wouldn't want to wish everyone a very pleasant Christmas and all the best for the new year. So there you go. And I will see you soon. So bye for now.